Okay, guys, so last video we talked about the some of the definitions in anatomy, and we talked about the body systems. Now we're going to talk about what makes life, movement. Living things move, either like this as a whole or within, like the blood inside. All living things are responsive. They respond to a behavior or a stimulus. All living things grow. They get bigger and they replace broken out body parts. They all reproduce, both within the organism, so creating a new human, a baby, or within the cells, getting new skin cells produced. We all respire. All living things respire. They obtain oxygen and release carbon dioxide in the case of animals, but in the case of plants, they also respire. They bring in carbon dioxide and send out oxygen. So all living things respire. All living things digest. They go through digestion to absorb or get the nutrients they need. There is mechanical digestion, which is physically making it smaller, like chewing. And there is chemical digestion, which is literally your stomach acid breaking down the food, and then absorbing those nutrients in is all part of digestion. All living things absorb. They pass materials through membranes from one to another. This happens in our digestive system for the nutrients to go from our stomach into our blood. This happens from our spotty cells to get rid of the waste back into the blood. This happens from our blood to our kidneys. This happens from our lungs into the gas goes past those membranes into the blood, and vice versa for the carbon dioxide. All living things will then circulate. They move things around. The lymphatic system and the cardiovascular system both do this. And all living things assimilate. That means that they change things so they are used for them. We take in water, and that actually helps us assimilate a lot. The reason why water is so important to life is because it helps us assimilate a lot of the stuff in our body to be used for chemical digestion, for just absorption and things like that. Water is important for all that. And then the last thing that's important for living is excretion. All living things get rid of waste somehow. Okay, so that's what it takes to be alive. Oh, sorry. All right. To be alive, we need 5 things to maintain our life. We need water, food, oxygen, heat, and pressure. You need your water to keep you, again, I told you about the digestion and absorption, and among a lot of other things. You need food to get those nutrients for your cells to work. You need oxygen to actually metabolize that stuff so you have energy and heat. You need heat to keep the body working at a right temperature. The body is made up of a lot of chemistry. And I know you might be like, oh, chemistry, but it's okay. We don't do a lot with the actual chemical equations, but you do need to know, like in chemistry, for a chemical reaction to occur, it needs to be at a certain temperature. If it's too hot or too cold, it either won't work at all or it'll work too quickly and not be good. And same with pressure. The human body needs that. That's why it's important that we are in that 98.6 range. And it is a range. Everybody's a little different to make the body work properly. And there's a certain amount of pressure. We need air pressure to help push air into our lungs. We need the water pressure inside of our body to kind of push back. We need all these pressures to be working throughout our body for it to live. Okay. So for an organism to live, we need the water. It is, again, the most abundant source in water or in the body. It's important for all of our metabolic processes, and it transports our substances and helps regulate our body temperature. We need food to provide our nutrients and supply energy, and we need the raw materials for our body. We need oxygen, which is just 1/5 of this air that's out here, to help us release the energy from our nutrients. I did say that already. Heat to control our metabolic reactions, and it's also a form of energy. And we need our pressure to act on an object. We need the atmospheric pressure for breathing and the hydrostatic pressure to keep blood flowing. Those are two examples that I already gave. And homeostasis. So homeostasis is the natural environment, the range of a natural environment we need to have. The temperature, the blood pressure, the heart rate, all of that stuff is part of our homeostasis. So to be in homeostasis, you need to maintain a stable internal environment. So we have our normal ranges, our physiological normals. Again, human's temperature, 98.6. The average blood sugar is between 80 and 120. The average blood pressure is 120 over 60. The average heart rate is about 70. We all have these normals, and if something is going out of that, we know something is wrong. If your temperature is too high, you have an infection of some kind. You get that. It's dynamic. It changes. So we have our temperature, it's at 98.6. It may rise when it's trying to kill off bacteria. And that's why you get a temperature to literally get to the point where it's too hot for the bacteria, the virus, to kill off that invader. But it doesn't want to get too high because then it starts causing the body to break down. That's that 105. If you get 105, you should go to the hospital. And then it'll come back down, and the body is constantly doing the seesaw motion to keep us healthy. And we have a bunch of fluid in our body. We have intracellular fluid, that is the fluid inside each cell, intracellular, and extracellular fluid, and that is the fluid around each cell. And that helps maintain our homeostasis. Each homeostatic control mechanism has three components: the receptor, which takes in the information, the control center, which makes the decisions about the information, and the effector, which sends out the reaction. So in the case of being cold, my skin says, oh, it is 60 degrees in my classroom. That it doesn't make a decision. My skin doesn't say 60 degrees is too cold. It just says 60 degrees. That sends it up to the brain. The brain says 60 degrees, that's too cold. And so then it sends that information to my muscles in my skin and says, start shivering. So then I shiver, which will then increase my body temperature, which will make me comfortable again. So, sorry. All right. It is continuous. We are, again, that balancing act. It's a nonstop balancing act. You can't ever stop balancing because you will fall over. We have two systems that really help us regulate that balance. That's the nervous system, and that's very fast. Anything that's happening, like somebody knocking on the door and I turn, that is a nervous system response, and it has electricity or action potentials traveling through. There's also the endocrine system, which produces hormones that helps regulate the body, but in a much slower, more controlled way. So that's a slow balance back and forth rather than a quick jolt. There are two types of control mechanisms. There's negative feedback and positive feedback. This does not mean negative is bad and positive is good. Negative means something happens and something else happens to make it go backwards. It's a seesaw. One goes up, one goes down. Positive feedback is something happens and it just keeps happening, getting worse until it's done. Negative is very common. Positive is less common in the human body, but it is very important. So the point of a negative feedback is to prevent sudden changes. It reduces the effects of the actions of the effector. So you don't shiver too much. So you don't, your body temperature doesn't go up so high that you can't bring it back down, and then you start killing off brain cells. It limits chaos in the body. It limits the disruption. That's why it's negative, because something is starting to disrupt and something else balances it out. It is the most common feedback loop. Body temperature, blood pressure, and glucose regulation are all important in that. So in this picture, you can see you have a normal body temperature about 98.6. Say that you got a little bit hot, overheated, running or something. The skin will say, oh, we got hot. The brain will say, oh, that's too hot. The effector will say, okay, start sweating. You might start sweating. Have you ever started sweating and got too cold? it has happened, right? So you start sweating, and then your body goes, oh, wait, now I'm a little too cold. And then it sends that, now my body temperature is lower than 98.6. Sends it to the brain. The brain says we can't have that too cold. Then it goes and says start shivering or get goosebumps and keep that heat in. And your body goes through this cycle to keep us at that 98.6, that constant balance. Positive feedback accelerates the action. Something happens and it keeps getting more and more and more until it's done. I know it's not appropriate, but I always think if you're going through hell, keep on going. That country song, that's what this is doing. It's if you're going through something, you keep going through until you get all the way through it. You don't back off like you do in negative feedback. Positive feedback, you keep going. So it increases the action. It makes your body very unstable, but it's important in that moment. And it produces more chaos in the body. And it's very important for survival, but there's only a few of them. It's very short-lived. It's not something that you're going to be going through for a month or whatever. The most common one is going to be childbirth and blood clotting. So in childbirth, well, actually, I'm going to point up the picture, so here we go. In childbirth, you get to be 9 months pregnant. Your belly is very large. When that happens, the baby starts pushing down on the cervix, which stretches the cervix, this green box. The receptors of the cervix says, oh, hey, I'm getting stretched. That sends information to the brain, and the brain says, oh, cervix is getting stretched. I think it's time. Then it sends information to the muscles in your abdomen and says, it's time to have this baby start squeezing, and that's a contraction. So then you have the contraction, and the body goes back up, and that contraction makes the baby push on the cervix more. And so when the baby pushes on the cervix more, it stretches more, and the brain says, oh, we're stretching. More contraction. And that's how childbirth works. You get more and more and more and more and more and more. Those contractions start at every hour, and then they eventually get to every minute until the baby is out. And the way you stop is when the event has stopped, when the child was born, when the blood has stopped bleeding for blood clotting. And I will stop there for today. We will pick up body cavities and the structure of the body in the next video. So I will talk to you guys later, and have a great day.